Welcome back. You are still watching Kwacha Making on Prime TV, and as I said earlier on, today we are talking to the team leader of Yapasa, Mr. Steve Morris, who is going to be giving us some details of this particular project. Welcome to this interview, Mr. Morris.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
First things first, how does the UN support the government of the Republic of Zambia to implement its development agenda in relation to creating jobs for the people?
Okay, so I mean, first of all, the UN is a world body. It's like the global civil service, so to speak, and has multiple agencies. Each agency has a specialized area that helps contribute towards the government of Zambia's development plans. Just recently, many of our colleagues have been involved in helping draft the 7th National Development Plan implementation area. And we're constantly supporting the government in implementing the development plan. So our agenda is led by the government's agenda. Within the UN agencies, the ILO is the agency that is in charge of the labour standards and labour law and anything to do with promoting decent work. Our biggest agenda is on the decent work agenda. What constitutes good quality work and fair employment. Our sister agency, the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, has a remit on promoting food security and food safety. And together, the two of us, ILO and FAO, jointly working together, are implementing what is known as the Yapasa Project, which is the one behind me here, which is all about creating decent jobs for youth. So, as you know, with the government, high on the agenda is employment creation. We have one of the youngest populations in Africa. We have a huge number of young people entering the job market every year. Most of them looking for employment, formal employment, and those jobs really just aren't there. A lot of them end up in the informal sector, where conditions are not so good. So we have an aim through the project to try and create decent work opportunities, particularly for youth in the rural areas. This is trying to encourage them to stay in the rural areas where conditions can be made conducive to running a business, and particularly in the agriculture sector.
Now, how does Yapasa project actually help in the creation of employment?
So the Yapasa project, we're actually taking what's known as a making markets work for the poor approach, or a market systems development approach. And this means actually looking at the way that a particular market is working, working with the private sector players in support of government, and really looking at where things in that market system need to be changed so that they are more favourable and inclusive to rural young populations. So we're working in the soya and aquaculture value chains, and that means working with companies and businesses that operate in those value chains, and trying to work with them to develop their business models so that they encourage opportunities for more rural youth. For example, in the soya value chain, we're working with off-taking companies that are operating outgrowing schemes, which enable young people to get involved as contract farmers, maybe coming into commercial agriculture for the very first time. Maybe they've seen their parents, or they've been involved in subsistence agriculture, growing food for their own use, but not really selling in the commercial setting. And we're trying to enable them to get involved in commercial agriculture, to get access to the inputs they require, and be able to farm at a profit, and actually do their farming as a business. This is the big difference from where we have been before.
Okay, now agriculture is usually regarded as an activity for the older generation. Why do you think this would attract young people?
So very often the statement here is agriculture needs to be made more sexy to encourage young people into it. We actually say within our project, it's not about making it sexy, it's about making it a realistic business proposition. It is quite possible to make a good return on your investment in agriculture. If you have the right inputs, if you have the right support services, if you get the right training in business, anybody can make a profit out of farming. And coming into it with that mindset of, I'm doing this as a business, and seeing that they can actually sometimes make more money out of this than some of the formal employment opportunities, that is attractive to young people. Given the chance, we have some of our farmers that we've interviewed have told us about their career choice. Some have even been to college, they've tried to make it in town, in various jobs. They've gone back to the rural areas and said, no, I'm going to make a business out of farming. And even over the last few seasons where the weather wasn't so good, people were actually making enough crop to sell properly and make a good income, and have actually been able to reinvest that in growing their business and have money that they can take out of the business to cover, further education for themselves.
Now, what opportunities are there for the rural youths who get involved?
So through our project, the key opportunities, I've alluded to them before. We're working in the soya and aquaculture value chains. So the immediate opportunity is for them to identify an outgrowing scheme within their locality. They can sign up as a contract into those schemes. And that's one of the easiest ways of getting into it. If they were trying to do this on their own, by themselves as an individual farmer, their biggest challenges are access to finance, because you've got to be able to buy the inputs, access to technical training, because you need to know how to grow the things properly, and the access to market, which an individual farmer finds very difficult. But by engaging with one of these outgrowing schemes, through the off-taking company, they can get access to the inputs on credit by taking out a loan there. They get access to training, both business training and technical training through the input supply companies. And they also get a guaranteed access to market, because the outgrowing company aggregates all the crop and sells it on their behalf. And one of our roles as the ILO is checking that the contract between the outgrowing company and the young farmer constitutes fair and decent work, and has all the right clauses in it to make sure that they're getting the right kind of training in health and safety when using spraying and equipment and things like that, and that they're getting a fair return on their investment through a transparent pricing mechanism. So that's the easiest way for them to get involved, is to sign up into one of these contracts. We're also encouraging these groups to form savings groups among themselves, so that as they get paid for their crop that they sell at the end of the year, they're encouraged to save that and reinvest it in further inputs. And you could envisage a future scenario where they eventually move out of those outgrowing schemes as they get more experienced in commercial agriculture. They can do this on their own.
Okay. Now, how do we know that these jobs that are being created constitute fair and decent work?
And again, I mentioned just before that some of the key decent work deficits, as we call them in the ILO, are not having a voice. So we have, through these schemes, the young people come together in groups and have a combined voice, so that they can actually raise their concerns about whether prices are fair or whether the health and safety issues are there. Other areas are about occupational health and safety. And if you're using agrochemicals, which need to be sprayed, are you getting trained in the right kind of safety? Are you having a mask? Are you knowing how to operate how to deal with the empty bottles afterwards. That's part of occupational safety and health, and that's part of decent work. Also being given the chance to have some kind of security through your farming. So just the existence of a contract that says at the end of the season your crop is going to be bought by an off-taker, that is something that gives security and helps to make sure that you're going to get your income when it's said to be. Other areas would be around the inclusion of social protection measures. So we encourage the use of inputs insurance, and we're even looking into the possibilities of mainstreaming social health insurance through these outgrower schemes as well. So as a package, those are things that very often many workers in the informal sector don't get access to, and that's what constitutes decent work.
Okay, now in how many districts are you so far?
We're working in several districts. The soya is largely in Central Province and Northern Province. So the soya schemes are mainly in Kasama, Luingu, Mbala, and in Central Province in Chibombo and I can't remember the districts actually. In the aquaculture, much of that, the fish farming activity, that's up in Luapula and Northwestern. So mainly around Solwezi, spreading into Kasempa and Winilunga. In Luapula, it's in Chilenje, Mansa, Mwense, and was it Kawambwa? We also have a small amount of the aquaculture and soya, both in Chongwe and aquaculture down in Chirundu. So the aquaculture schemes are similar to the soya schemes. This is where young people get together in a group and each one has a pond, and they get the support to stock those ponds with fingerlings and feed them with quality feed and raise them up to table size, and then the off-taking company helps them to harvest that and sells it for them. So the reason that the aquaculture is in those particular districts, Luapula and Northwestern have the best water bodies and the best opportunities for aquaculture.
Okay. For how long has this program been running?
The Yapasa Project has been going for 3.5 years now. We're entering our final year, but we're also getting a project extension. And we aim to be around for the next few years as well. But the main thing, going back to what I was saying about the market systems development work, the work is sustainable because the companies themselves are the ones running their businesses. Our role as a project is just to advise them and help them to establish and redesign their business models. So as a project, we're not delivering anything in particular. We're not doing training ourselves. We're not setting up things ourselves. We're not doing things ourselves. So when we go, these businesses carry on doing what they're doing. And as I said, with those businesses, that's the entry point for many young farmers. But the trajectory is that they would be able to make it by themselves after gaining the experience of being involved in these schemes.
That was our interview segment on kwacha making this segment. Don't forget to join us again next time as we bring to you another exciting interview. But for now, we take a break and we'll be back with other segments.